Hey guys, welcome into the 14. I'm Nick Cole. We're breaking down each SEC football game in Week 10 from a betting perspective. Today, we're talking about the Missouri Tigers visiting the Georgia Bulldogs. This game's going to be played at noon Eastern time on Saturday at Sanford Stadium in Athens, Georgia. This game will be broadcast on ESPN. From a betting perspective, this game opened with Georgia as a 39-point favorite. It's moved slightly. As of this recording, the Bulldogs are favored by 38.5. The over-under in the game opened at 61.5 and has since dropped to 59.5. Bringing our betting analyst, Christopher Smith. Christopher, this is the most lopsided game on the SEC slate this week. Are you excited to bet it?
Yeah, I think I'm more frustrated than anything just because I believe we both took Missouri last week. And by Thursday night, I was like, this was a huge mistake. I was looking at a few things and thought like, man, I really wish I could take that pick back out of all the picks. So we'll see if one of us or both of us make a mistake here based on that or not. But Nick, why don't you get into the weather, injuries, and Nick's news and notes?
Yeah, anytime you have to go into the final minutes against Vanderbilt to pull out a win this season, you're not in good shape. I'll put it that way. Let's start with the weather for this game. In Athens on Saturday afternoon, we should see temperatures in the 50s, which is nice. The wind is going to be about 10 miles an hour, which is right on that threshold of being meaningful. If you want to check the forecast there right in the minutes leading up to kickoff to make sure that the gusts or something aren't getting above that threshold. But if it holds at 10 or under, we should be okay. And there's really no chance of rain in the forecast for Saturday. On the injury side of things, let's start with Missouri. Quarterback Connor Bazelak left the game against Vanderbilt late in the second half. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but it's probably the key point to follow whether you're going to bet on Missouri or not this week based on his status coming into the kickoff on Saturday. But also injured for the Tigers, wide receivers Chance Looper and Mookie Cooper are both considered questionable for this game. Offensive guard Case Cook, defensive lineman Chris Turner are both out for the season. Cornerback Allie Green IV and Ishmael Burdine, as well as defensive end Johnny Walker Jr. are among Missouri's players that are also questionable. They're on the defensive side of the ball. And for Georgia, on their side, we've talked about them all season long, the issues that they've dealt with from an injury standpoint, an eligibility standpoint, things like that. Some names I'll bring back up to you just to remind you. Star wide receiver George Pickens is working his way back, but he's not quite there yet. They don't know exactly when they're going to get him, but he's out. Tight end Eric Gilbert still out. Linebacker Tresman Marshall, running back Kendall Milton, safety Tyke Smith, linebacker Ryan Davis, cornerback Jalen Kimber, guard Tate Rutledge, wide receiver Dominique Blaylock, cornerback Amir Speed, and then let's throw wide receiver Justin Robinson into the question mark as well. They're all considered questionable for this game, and we'll just have to see what we get from those last couple there. On the news and notes front, let's start with the college football playoff rankings. I think it's to nobody's surprise here that after Georgia went to Jacksonville and walloped the Gators to continue their unbeaten season, that when the CFP committee rolled out their first rankings this week, that Georgia was the clear number one choice. And perhaps more important to note is that Alabama was actually the number two choice. So if that's the likely opponent in the SEC championship game for Georgia, looking a few weeks down the road, they've got a really good chance at making a playoff appearance, win or lose, with that being a potential loss if they're the number two team. But the thing I would bring up on the other side of this game from Missouri's standpoint, which is probably going to have a much greater impact on how you bet this game, is the status of starting quarterback Connor Bazelak. If you listen to some of the Missouri offensive players who spoke to the media this week, they sure did act like there was a potential that Bazelak wouldn't play. They were talking about things like looking forward to seeing what these guys have up their sleeves on Saturday. Now, maybe Eli Drinkwitz has coached these guys up. The PR people coach these guys up to throw in some things that throw off Kirby Smart. But the way they were talking about it made me think we may need to anticipate the idea that Bazelak won't be in the lineup. And Kirby Smart himself sounds like he expects someone other than Bazelak to play this week. He brought up that Tyler Macon actually reminds him of Gators quarterback Anthony Richardson, who he had a field day with last week in terms of athleticism. But he did say that having to prepare for him does throw some extra wrinkles into the Georgia practice this week. That I don't know if that changes anything, but when you're looking at a 38.5 point line, Christopher, any little change in that offense could be the difference in covering and not, right?
Yeah. And you also mentioned that 38.5 point number, which if you're looking at Georgia here, you're hopefully going to find a 38 at some sports book before you get to kickoff. But let's not kid ourselves. Missouri's offense is Tyler Beatty and Tyler Beatty alone, no matter what happens with Connor Bazelak, if he plays, if he doesn't play. I mean, he threw for 174 on 6.4 yards per attempt against Vandy outside of the one Hail Mary and looked just totally not confident. So even if he does play, they don't really have the receivers to do anything anyway, especially not against Georgia or the offensive line. So the thing is that Tyler Beatty had 39 touches against Vanderbilt. I mean, I've heard people joke before in non-sports context about carrying a company or carrying a group of people on their back for whatever reason, but this is almost literal. I mean, Beatty's got to be sore from carrying Missouri's team. 39 touches in a game is no joke. And on the other side of the ball, let's talk about Vanderbilt, your Nashville team there. And, they rushed for 256 yards, Vanderbilt, against Mississippi State, South Carolina, Florida, and Georgia combined. That's 4 SEC teams. 256 rushing yards on 118 carries. And that's a good ways under 3 yards per carry. So 4 teams, 256 rushing yards. Well, against Missouri, they rushed for 258 yards against one team. So they rushed for more yards against Missouri than they did against South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and Mississippi State combined. And, you look at also Missouri allowed 914 rushing yards on 5.8 yards per carry to, now get ready for this list, 5.8, basically 6 yards a carry against Vanderbilt, North Texas, SEMO, and Central Michigan. So those are the teams running for 6 yards a carry against Missouri. Now, Missouri's rush defense in EPA per snap, not only are they 130th, they're more than 15% worse than number 129. And, I use CFB stats a lot for college football stats. Their database goes back to 2009. The worst SEC team in yards per game allowed rushing, the worst defense in the SEC since that database existed is Ole Miss in 2016. They allowed 246 a game. Missouri is allowing 284 a game at this point. And Georgia runs the ball 62.7% of the time. They also are pretty deep in offensive line and running back. So you would imagine that Georgia's going to maybe throw 0 passes or only on 3rd and 14 or something, in the 3rd and 4th quarters. So you're going to see a lot of running the ball from Georgia with the lead. And I don't think that's actually going to matter, or it may actually help them score more when they only run against this Missouri team, even with their backups. So if Missouri keeps giving Georgia good field position and extra possessions and maybe even some defensive or non-offensive touchdowns for Georgia, then I think this game could be very, very embarrassing for Missouri. So, but there is a huge number on the side. So, Nick, how are you betting on this game?
So here's the deal. I think Georgia wins this game so very easily. I don't think much of Missouri at all right now. That my hope is, my game script, my game plan for picking this game. I'm not betting this with my real money this week. I don't have a confidence that this is going to play through, but this is for the purposes of making picks for our show here. This is my game script here. Georgia's going to have this game in hand by the end of the first half. And so with them, I like the under 59.5 just because I think they're going to, like you said, I don't know they're going to have to throw a pass in this game if they don't want to. So I think that we could see the clock run really fast in the second half. So under 59.5 for me. And then I'm banking on the fact that Georgia has no incentive to run up this game. They've actually got all the incentive in the world to get their players off the field, run the ball, get out of town, and get ready for the next game. So I'm going to take Mizzou plus a 38.5. Although I definitely could see a scenario in this game where like Georgia's up 42-0 at halftime or something, and I'm here praying for a touchdown from Mizzou to get me where I need to be. Christopher, how do you view this one?
Yeah, I'm trying to look right now. I do see at least 1 or 2 38s in the market. Not many, but Yeah, there are a couple of spots you can pick and choose. So if you do want Georgia, I would take a hard look at shopping around and trying to get a line at 38 that you have access to. That's what I'm definitely going to do myself. I'm going to take Georgia in this game and under 59.5. The total is something that I don't want to touch just because I do think Missouri will struggle to score 10 points in this game on offense, even if they get a late touchdown or something like that. But I could see Georgia not throwing the ball a single time in this game and still scoring 60 points if they really wanted to. So, especially if Missouri is going 3-and-out and turning the ball over and handing Georgia great field position all the time. So, yeah, I'm taking Georgia in this game. And just for the record, I'll take the under. But if you can get a Georgia 38, minus 38, that's my preference for betting on this game. But for Nicole, I'm Christopher Smith for the 14, and we'll talk to you next week.